Write a text RPG in Python where the player is fighting a series of successively tougher enemies. During combat, there should be interesting choices the player can make. On victory, there should be interesting choices about what armor or weapon to upgrade to, or they can heal. Of course, ChatGPT is pretty good at doing that. Sure, here's a basic concept for a text-based RPG implemented in Python. It has some simple combat and progression mechanics. This is super simple. It runs, but that's pretty much it. This game allows the player to choose between attacking and defending in combat, and to choose between upgrading health, attack, or defense after each victory. The enemies become progressively stronger as the player progresses. Note that the player's level increases after each victory as well, leading to tougher enemies. I complain. The line, "You have player.health and enemy.health." That's confusing, so it fixes that right up. Moving on, however, there's not much excitement in the game. Plus, how do I even know what my attack or defense are, or what the enemies are? And again, it fixes that. You're right. Adding more transparency to the player and enemy's stats and more varied choices could make the game more engaging. Here's a revised version of the game. I ask it then, add in some randomness. Certainly, adding in random elements can make the game more unpredictable and exciting. Here's a version with randomness incorporated in the enemy's attributes, the player's attack and defense outcomes, and the healing process. This version of the game has various elements of randomness: enemy attributes, player's attack, player's defense, player's healing, and level up. I then ask it, does the enemy actually attack? Because I don't see that happening. Yes, the enemy does attack the player, but it is currently happening automatically without any explicit announcement in the script. The line where this happens is this. To make the enemy's attack more explicit, you could modify the fight function to print a message when the enemy attacks. Here's an updated version of the fight function with added print statements. All that works fairly well, but it's still pretty boring. Here's the interesting part. Now, add synergistic elements to play. Sure. A simple way to introduce synergistic elements is to add special abilities that change in effect based on the player's current stats or actions. For example, we can introduce a power strike ability that uses a player's health to boost their attack, and a shield wall ability that uses a portion of the player's attack to boost their defense. Here's an updated version of the game. Now the player has two new combat options. Power strike. This strong attack uses a portion of the player's health to increase the damage done to the enemy. The trade-off is that the player loses some health in the process. Shield wall. This defensive move boosts the player's defense at the expense of some attack power. Since I'm particularly lazy, I ask it, what is interesting from a technological standpoint about the conversation you and I just had? This conversation showcases several important aspects of AI technology and natural language processing. Contextual understanding, which is pretty interesting. As an AI, I was able to understand and address your requests in a meaningful way, building up upon prior information in the conversation. This includes understanding the context of Python programming and text RPG mechanics. Incremental development, also really interesting. We essentially developed a simple text RPG incrementally, which illustrates how an AI can participate in an iterative design and coding process, refining the code based on user feedback. It also does code generation, AI teaching, problem solving, bridging human and machine learning, but really, this is the most interesting tidbit right there. Now, a shortcoming of current large language models is a small context window. That means that it really only just has a small amount of memory in its brain, so to speak, which means that the amount of code that it can generate is only so large. I think what's really going to be interesting is when we have a larger context window, which again means larger bits of code it can generate, we can actually start talking to it as though we are paired with another designer/programmer. And that means that at 2 a.m., when I'm wondering, man, how can I add more synergies to my RPGs? It'll help me come up with that in a useful, non-trivial manner.